Welcome Wargamers, this is Doug with 2 Plus Stuff, and today we're talking about Flesh Eater Quartz. Okay. That's right, we're talking about Flesh Eater Quartz. This question comes from Nick Larocco, and I know I took a break from answering people's specific questions. That's because as soon as I said I was doing 5 videos a day, I caught a huge cold and lost my voice. So the videos you've been seeing are all my backlog of stuff, as I just today was able to talk again. So we're going to pick back up. If you feel like you've been commenting and not getting a response from me as far as like video content, that's why. I've just been sick. Anyway, we're going to pick back up. Nick actually left this comment on one of the first allegiance ability things that I did, and so I want to start there. Now, as always, I do read every single comment and respond to as many as I can. If there's a video that you want to see, either a lore review, allegiance ability thing, whatever in Age of Sigmar, click subscribe, leave it in the comments down below, and we'll get right to it. Now, as you can see from Nick's post, I only had it up there for a split second. He does have kind of an in-depth question, which we're going to answer towards the end. What I'm going to do is go over the allegiance abilities themselves, talk about how that kind of fits into the Flesh Eater Quartz army, and then we're going to answer his question more directly. I'll put it back on the screen. But basically, he's asking, is this better than Grand Alliance Death? And it's a very valid question. Now, before I begin, I want to shout out to 2 other videos that I did. One of them is the Flesh Eater Quartz lore, which these abilities play really well into. So I'll leave that in the show notes down below, as well as I did a review of the Start Collecting box, which is probably one of the best places to start for this army because you get so much in it. So if anything I say to you sounds interesting, those 2 videos are a really great place to start. Okay, so the Flesh Eater Quartz really got 3 major allegiance abilities. Okay, and those are going to be Deathless Courtiers, Feeding Frenzy, and Courts of Delusion, and we'll get to each one of those one by one. Now, the Deathless Courtiers one is really simple. A lot of the allegiances from the General's Handbook 2017 have this kind of thing where it's just a modified version of the Grand Alliance ability. So, for example, the Deathless minions in Grand Alliance Death is that if you're within so much of a distance of your hero, you get to roll a 6-up, basically a mega save. After you've done your normal save, you get a chance to save a wound. It kind of like adds a little bit of durability to the army. This is the same thing, so if you're within 6 inches of a Flesh Eater Quartz hero, and you take a wound after the armor save, you roll a die, and then on a 6, it's fine. Now, the thing that makes this particularly good is that in Flesh Eater Quartz, you have either a lot of dudes, meaning a lot of ghouls running around, or you have the high wound count models, the bigger dudes who can absorb more of a blow. So you are going to use that more than, say, Soul Blight, where they don't have as many wounds. But again, it's not a stellar ability. It doesn't really stand out as being like game-changing. The second ability is called Feeding Frenzy. This is actually very simple. What it is every time a Flesh Eater Quartz unit destroys an enemy unit, could be a single model, could be an entire unit, you roll a die. On a 6, that unit who just did the destroying can then pile in and attack again. Now, this is cool. I mean, you're going to be having a lot of units on the field. You're going to be hopefully destroying a lot of enemy units. Because it's a random thing on a roll of a 6, it's not going to come up all the time. There could be entire games where it never happens. There could be games where it happens twice. The thing is, to make the most use of this, all your units have to be engaged with multiple enemy units. It specifically says that the unit that destroyed something gets to attack again, and if you destroy the only thing in your melee range, piling in and attacking doesn't mean anything. Again, this is kind of, I feel, it's not quite as good as the 6-up always save. It's just a little extra thing that you can keep in the back pocket just to kind of remind yourself that you have some more abilities. And the last little allegiance thing they get is Courts of Delusion. Now, this functions very much similar to the Dispossessed Grudges, right? Where you pick one before the battle, and they're just small bonuses that your entire army gets. I'm going to run through them real quick. I'll throw a little bit of artwork on the screen so you don't have to stare at me. So you have Crusading Army, which is you can reroll dice rolls of 1 when you make a run or charge roll. Royal Hunt, which is reroll hit and wound rolls of 1 for attacks when you make attacks against monsters. The Feast Day, which is you can reroll dice rolls of 1 when rolling to see if a unit enters the Feeding Frenzy, like the other roll. So now you have another higher chance of getting that Feeding Frenzy off. A Matter of Honor, you can reroll hit rolls of 1 for attacks made by all Flesh Eater Quartz if they target a hero. And you also get to reroll wound rolls of 1 if the hero that you're attacking is actually their general. The Grand Tournament. You can reroll hit rolls of 1 for attacks made by Flesh Eater Courts heroes other than your general. So basically, any heroes you have in your army can always reroll hit rolls of 1, just not your general. Defenders of the Realm, you can reroll save rolls of 1 for friendly Flesh Eater Courts that have at least half their models in their own territory. Which is good if you're fighting a shooting army and you're afraid of turn 1 devastation, right? Your entire army is going to be within your deployment zone, in your territory, so that's just an extra like turn 1, maybe turn 2 save. And so these things are really important to keep in mind as we kind of talk about the army, that everything is going to have the backdrop that you have one of these abilities. Now, what Nick was bringing up is that are these better or as good as the ones that you get in Grand Alliance Death, and we're going to kind of review that towards the end. Now, the two that really stand out to me are the first one, Crusading Army, rerolling once to run and charge, because this is such a melee-focused army that you need to get in there as soon as possible. So having that, roll of a 1, you can't really afford that. So I think that's just an added layer of protection to making sure everyone can move up. And the second one is Defenders of the Realms. So this is just a little layer of protection against turn 1 shooting from your opponent. Like I said, the other ones, they all have uses. It depends on your army composition. If you have a lot of heroes, going for the one where all your heroes except for your general can reroll hit rolls of 1, that might not be a bad idea. But generally speaking, I think that the most utility comes out of those two abilities. So now I'm going to throw some art up on the screen. I'm going to dive into the command traits. We'll come back and review them, and then we'll dive into the artifacts. Alright, starting with the command traits. Bringer of Death. You can reroll wound rolls of 1 for the general. That's okay. A lot of your generals don't want to be in combat unless they're riding the Terrorgeist. Yeah. Frenzied Flesh Eater. Reroll all failed hit rolls while the general is subject to a feeding frenzy. This is super nuanced because it not only does it mean your general has to be engaged in fighting, he has to be engaged with multiple targets to benefit from feeding frenzy. Majestic Horror. If the general has a command ability that allows them to summon models to the battlefield, they can use it twice in each of their hero phases. If they don't have such a command ability, they can use the Summon Men-at-Arms ability from the Arborant Ghoul King's War Scroll once in each of their hero phases. So basically, you get to be a wizard if you're not one and summon ghoul guys. Conversely, if you already have that ability, say you have an Arborant Ghoul King as your general, or not even general, but in the army, you can go ahead and use that twice. Now, this does cost you reserve points, from what I understand. Nothing says it doesn't. So keep that in mind. It could be perceived as more deployment strategies. If you build your army to it, this could be a really cool thing. Savage Beyond Reason. Add 1 to the dice rolls to see if your general becomes subject to feeding frenzy. Parallels very well with the other one we talked about, where now your general has to be in a lot of combat. Like I said, if you have a melee-focused general and you want him in combat, this is not a bad idea. Dark Wizardry. Add 1 to casting and unbinding rolls for the general. And if he's not a wizard, they gain the wizard keyword and can use the same magical abilities as an Arborant Ghoul King. At that point, I wonder why you're not just taking an Arborant Ghoul King. If spellcasting is super important to your strategy, this could be a good idea. Completely Delusional. As long as the general is alive at the start of your hero phase, you can change the delusion of the army that the army suffers. So what this is, it doubles down on the delusions that we talked about earlier, where every single turn you can pick the right one for that turn. Now, these are some pretty good command abilities. The ones that stand out to me are Majestic Horror. If you build your list around having summonable or specifically ghouls in arms, that ability to bring people to the tabletop, it is definitely amazing to double down on that and get the most out of it. Again, that requires this concept from the list building perspective, that you have those reserve points set up for them. Also, Completely Delusional, giving your army that versatility in all of these bonuses. Maybe the first turn, it's all about running and charging. Second turn, you can see opportunities to hit heroes, and so you do that, and so forth. So those two stand out as being the most versatile on a tabletop. And with that all done, we're going to move into the artifacts. The Splinter Vein Brooch. Subtract 1 from casting rolls made from enemy wizards within 12 inches of this model. If magic is really hurting you in your meta, yeah, that's not a bad idea. I find that most wizards are standing farther back than you'd want a hero with this thing to be. So like my point being that you're not really going to reach him necessarily all the time. So remember, a lot of casting ranges are 18 inches, and this is only 12. So you have to get really up inside a wizard's face for this to have much value. The Grim Garland. Subtract 2 from bravery of enemy units within 6 inches of this model. Now here's the thing, with the amount of attacks that you're going to be throwing out with hordes of ghouls and crypt horrors and things like that, subtracting 2 from the bravery could actually be very, very devastating. So if you have a support piece hero behind a large unit that's doing a lot of damage, this could actually be really, really effective. The Keening Bone. Pick one melee weapon this model can use. Increase the range of this weapon to 3 inches. I haven't gone through every single weapon that every hero in this army can take. I just don't have the time for it. I can't imagine that there's one singular weapon that, when it goes up to 3 inches, just becomes absolutely a murder storm. So I'm going to pass on that one with a soft one because I haven't looked at every single thing. The Flayed Pennant. You can use this artifact once per battle in your charge phase. When you do so, all friendly Flesh Eater courts within 6 inches of this model can attempt to charge if they are within 15 inches of the enemy. When you do, add 3 to their charge roll. So basically, it just amplifies charge rolls. It says you can charge within 15 inches. Whatever you roll to charge, add 3 inches. It's pretty cool, actually. If you combine this with, say, the reroll ones to run and charge with as far as the delusion goes, you can move up the board reasonably fast, and this is a very melee-centric army. So far, this seems to be really, really useful on the tabletop. Blood River Chalice. You can use this artifact once per battle in your hero phase. When you do so, the model heals D6 wounds. Now, if your general is going to be like a Ghoul King on, pick whatever Mega Monster, Zombie Dragon, or Terrorgeist that you have, this is going to be great because those things are already fairly hard to deal with, and so having a turn where you snap it back D6 wounds, whatever, it can be really good, and it can save your tail more than once. At least give you a chance to retreat, fall back, do whatever you need to do. Heart of the Gargant Feast. You can use this artifact once per battle in your combat phase. When you do so, you can reroll failed wound rolls for this model in that combat phase. Again, this is going to have the most benefit if you have a hero on a beastie, because they have the most attacks of anything else. So if you get him in there and you know that this guy needs to kill a specific thing, it's going to be devastating, especially if that thing is, say, a hero and you have the delusion set to be that hero, or the hero one that lets you reroll ones with hit rolls on heroes. You can combine those things. It can be pretty devastating, but again, it has to be based upon that you have this big guy and a beastie ready to kill something. And that concludes the artifacts portion. So I'm going to pause here. We're going to talk a little bit about Flesh Eater Courts versus Grand Alliance Chaos. One, if you are at any level a thematic player, you're going to go with the Flesh Eater Courts one because the delusion thing adds a little bit of extra cushioning. In fact, even if you are a competitive person, there is some appeal to having the delusions. If you were to, say, take the command ability that let you change delusions every turn, what this does is it opens up an entire panel of options for you. Now, to Nick's question, basically what he points out, and then I'll kind of put the question back up here, and I'll kind of just summarize. A lot of the Flesh Eater Court synergies within the faction before this book have reroll hit rolls of 1 to blank, right? Based on unit size, if you're close to a hero, all these kinds of things. And so does this set of allegiance abilities really add that much so that you would take this over, say, Grand Alliance Death? Well, fundamentally, there's not really an easy answer. One of them is that delusion abilities don't generally care where ranges are. So yes, you could have your reroll hit rolls of 1 if you're near a certain hero. What this is saying is anyone can do it anywhere. And there is a value in being able to spread out these huge hordes of ghouls and crypt horrors like that and not having to worry about being near a hero for maximized efficiency. Then again, I do understand your point. It does seem a little bit redundant. And so what you need to do is figure out, first of all, what kind of list you want to have as far as if you want to go Flesh Eater Courts, do you want to double down on the delusions? Because if so, I would say get the command ability that let you change every turn. And then really focus on timing which ones you need where. This is going to be all about target priority, where your troops are on the field. If you are not so much interested in that and you just want to go straight with kind of the attritional style of death, then go with the Grand Alliance. I generally think that sticking with Flesh Eater Courts and picking the delusions very, very carefully, as well as kind of maximizing what they're good at, meaning what I would do is go the command ability with choosing delusions every turn, really focus on developing your skills and choosing the right one. As far as artifacts go, picking the the one that lets you move 15 inches and add 3 to your charge range, whatever. Not move 15 inches, charge 50 inches. And that kind of stuff. Doubling down on the movement characteristics because you have such a melee-centric army and finding ways to develop that. So it's not an easy question. It really isn't. It's a very tough one because they made the synergies in the alliance abilities so similar to the ones that already exist. The real, like I said, restriction that's lifted off is being in range of certain heroes to do that. Now, I will say, I did I used to own the Flesh Eater Courts Battle Tome, and as you're reading it, the problem is that heroes cost at least like 100 points. And so having everything revolving around being near heroes got really daunting for the army because you wanted to be everywhere, but you're kind of anchor bound to these heroes. And so what this does is kind of lifts that restriction. You can fit more dudes. If you fit more dudes, you have more units. More units, more attacks means more chances to get the feeding frenzy off. So it kind of builds upon itself, if you know what I mean. Like if you view it as freedom from heroes, or at least being near a hero, you can kind of do a lot more. You can cut down on heroes, increase your number of units. Increasing number of units increases like feeding frenzies and things like that. And so, and more bodies means more chances to get those 6-up saves from the Deathless Courtiers. So it kind of like amplifies when it builds on itself. So you can't just look at it strictly in terms of reroll hit rolls to 1. Is that worth it going one way or the other? It's kind of one big pill, right? More dudes means everything else you get gets amplified. Now that being said, I do see your point, Nick, in that redundancy is not very exciting, right? Like, I would have almost preferred the Dispossessed, where it's just reroll hit rolls of 1 against, you know, this. Simply because, I don't know, this doesn't really add a whole lot. The fact that the army already has some of those things built in means when you're reading it, you're like, oh, okay, I already kind of have that. But seeing the opportunities to decrease the number of heroes you have, increase the number of troops, makes everything else that you get in the allegiance abilities better. That being said, a lot of the things I've already said about this army still hold true in the sense that it's a very infantry-based army, a lot of attrition, they regenerate troops, they can do all kinds of stuff. There's a good mix of spellcasting, there's a good mix of heavy bodies and light little gribbly guys. It's got a lot going for it, and I think that these kind of double down on that. The fact that you don't have to choose between the Deathless Minions bonus of getting a 6-up mega save and you know, having certain things as troops, you don't have that confliction anymore, is a huge relief to a lot of Flesh Eater Court players. So Nick, I hope I answered your question, at least in some way. It's kind of a complicated one. You just have to look at it, I guess, a little bit differently. If you have a question and you want to ask it, click subscribe, leave it in the comments down below. I'm going through these one by one. I read every single comment. I use many of them for inspiration for videos. Thank you guys so much for watching, and happy wargaming.